What is up, guys? Happy Friday to all who celebrate. On this video, I was thinking about I would love to do I did a short reel on Instagram, kind of breaking down the Boston course. And I was like, man, I would love to do a video, like really breaking down this course more, kind of mile by mile. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm not going to put this on a podcast or anything. It's just going to be a YouTube video. So I don't know, like I know some of you watching this or that listen to our podcast or follow the YouTube are running Boston, which is great. But I know some of you are just, interested in Boston, like following the pro race, just tracking people. It's the Super Bowl of marathons, right? It's a really exciting race. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of do a breakdown mile by mile of the course. I thought that might be helpful for maybe especially the newcomers to Boston or just people that are fans of the sport. Like I said, I will say we did do a Boston tips and tricks, kind of like course breakdown, but not as like detailed as this episode. That's like over an hour long with our good friend Mike Corfage, who is on his 13th Boston Marathon in a row this year. He is a wealth of knowledge on this race. He knows how to maximize the weekend. He is all the, he has this awesome church service he goes to where they bless the runners. They go to the finish line after the race to get a group photo. They do he has like a driver that picks him up at the airport every year and drives him around all weekend. They got a post-race meetup spot at this like specific tree in Boston Common where they hang out after the race. They eat at the same restaurants every year and stuff. So like he just knows the race so well. So in the whole weekend, so that'll release next week, early next week. And I hope you guys that are running or just fans of Boston listen to that episode because it's really fun, really informative, some laughs, stories from Boston, just a lot of good stuff. So hope you guys tune into that. But on this one, we're going to geek out a little bit, go mile by mile on the course. Just for reference, I did not make this mile by mile article. It's actually on a website called bostondiscoveryguide.com. If you just search Boston mile by mile, it'll come up for you. You can scan through it yourself. I'm going to use it like obviously as a reference, but I'll also just like give some personal memories. I've run Boston 3 times. This will be my 4th time. I ran it in the fall, my first time I ran it, and then 6 months later ran it again. When they had it in the fall because of COVID, I think that was 21, and then 22 I ran it. So 6 months, ran it twice in 6 months, which was interesting. And then ran it again last year with my wife, paced my wife. I've had 2 blow-ups and then one really fun race with my wife. So I think I went 246, 247. I really I'm going for sub 220 this year. I wasn't really training super seriously over COVID, unfortunately. If I could go back, I would change a lot of things, but it is what it is. But now I'm going for a solid time, which is fun. I did run 320 with my wife last year, which was a PR for her. That was a core memory for us. So if you ever have the opportunity to run with your spouse at the Boston Marathon, I promise you will not regret that. It was a lifelong memory I will always cherish. So very cool. But anyway, let's dive in. So obviously, mile 1, at 0.0, you leave Hopkinton High and you walk. It's about like a half mile, almost like nearly a half mile to the start line from the high school. We actually have a place that we go to before the race. I think we're supposed to keep it kind of low key. We have a bit of a connection in Hopkinton where we can hang out and there's like bathrooms and food and stuff. I'll keep that low key on, all of that, but we have a good connection there for sure. And so that's what we do. And then we walk to the start line from there, but it's still like a pretty decent walk. So it's just more like having access to restrooms without the long lines and stuff. Anyway, so get to the start line. Hopkinton is a small town. The bus ride is like 45 minutes from Boston Common to Hopkinton. You hang out in Hopkinton for a while, get to the start line. The start line's crazy. So guys, like when you start this race, mile 0 to mile 1, just keep in mind that it's going to be, and here's, sorry, I had it on mile 1 to 2. This is mile 0 to 1 here at Hopkinton. Keep in mind, at these major races, the first like quarter or half mile are extremely packed up. So you're going to be just like, so this is a good example. I ran Chicago Marathon in 2024. I was in like the first wave or whatever. I was trying to break 2:30, and I was like so frazzled about like hitting my first mile with a good time that I found myself like zigzagging through the crowd and ended up, one, too fast that mile, but two, I wasted so much energy like getting through the crowd in this at Chicago because it's like so jam packed, and that like came back to bite me later in the race. I like kind of blew up around 2:34. Not a total blow up, but not a great one either. So that was disappointing. But anyway, like from that experience, I learned that these major races, when you're like starting with a huge crowd of people, if your first mile is like 15, even 20 seconds slower than you want it to be, guys, you got 25 more miles. Like in the grand scheme of things, 15 or 20 seconds can easily be made up over the race as long as you don't blow up, blow or like burn yourself out too much that first mile of the race. Then as long as you pace the race well, you can easily make that up the last 5-6 miles of the race if you feel good. So for those of you like running your first Boston, yes, it will be crowded at the beginning of the race, but don't panic. Don't be jumping on the sidewalk. Don't turn your ankle. Don't go zigzagging through the crowd. It opens up pretty quickly. So it will feel like it's not going to the first quarter mile of the race, but especially if you're kind of in that like sub 3 kind of group or anything faster than that, it will break up pretty quickly. So don't worry. One thing that makes Boston a little more hectic too is mile 1 is a huge downhill. So you pretty much start and you're just like a roller coaster downhill kind of setup. So, and this is where we'll kind of dive into this summary of how this guide from the Boston Discovery Guide, which I really like. So interestingly enough, so the race starts at 490 feet of elevation. The route begins at Hopkinton Common, and this is the highest elevation of the whole race. So as many of you know, Boston is notoriously a net downhill course. So where you start is the highest point of the race, and then you lose several hundred feet. Obviously, there's up and down throughout the race. It's a hilly course. It's not technically really like a fast course. It can be if there's a tailwind. But people can still run. You can still PR here. It's not like a race where you're like, there's no way I PR here. If you run it the right way, you can PR at the Boston Marathon. So hopefully this guide helps you out with that. So mile 1, you start at 490 feet. And then like this guide says, almost immediately, the elevation drops. And then keep in mind here, this is important to know, except for a small hill after the first kilometer. That is indeed true. From my experience at the Boston Marathon, there is a small uphill at around 1K before you continue going down. But the total drop, mile 1, is 130 feet. That is a staggering drop, mile 1 of a big crowd major race. So just like this is where, guys, like mile 1 is where you can ruin your race. Again, you can like burn the quads. Like there's so many things that can happen mile 1 here that you need to be careful. So don't burn your quads mile 1 of this race. And also just like, don't burn a ton of energy, like zigzagging through people. I have done both of these things at this race. So trust me, just be careful that first mile. There's so much downhill on mile 1 and even going into mile 2 here. So mile 1 to 2. So you start at 360 feet. It's like more rolling here, but you still lose between mile 2 and 3, you lose 40 feet. So you go 360 to 320. So while it is more of a rolling mile instead of a big downhill mile, you still lose 40 feet. So it's still quite a bit downhill. And then from this point, from mile 1 to 2, and then going into 3, you go into the city of Ashland. So you leave Hopkinton and you make your first city change into Ashland. More rolling hills, as this says, But again, pay attention to the elevation at start, going towards the elevation at mile 4, 320 down to 265. So this is again a huge drop. I mean, let's do public math here. 55 feet drop from miles from I guess mile 2 to 3 of this race, so in Ashland. So you're still like significantly going downhill. So these miles like 1 through 4 are the miles where you can really destroy your quads. So like yes, use the downhills to your advantage, but don't like go 20, 30 seconds faster than your goal marathon pace. While that might feel like easy to do, you need to have some control on these downhills or your quads are going to be done. Like if you have like heavy or soreness in your quads at mile 4 or 5 of this race, I promise you, once you get to the Newton Hills, it is going to be a death march the last 5 miles. Like once you get over the hills, your quads are going to have nothing left. They're going to be spasming. We talk about this in our preview for Boston a bit. There's no other races where there's more people suffering the last 5 miles than Boston, where you can like pass more people because you got calf, quad, hammy cramps. All of these people like are cramping up or they're just like dealing with this extreme muscle fatigue from like just tanking down these hills. So you got to be careful on these downhills. Use them, maybe 5-10 seconds faster than your goal marathon pace, but don't like just recklessly abandon any sort of pacing and just sprint down the hills because it feels easy. So just be careful. Miles 3 to 4. So yeah, for mile 2 to 3, 320 feet down to 265. You are still in Ashland, rolling hills, and then we have a huge drop as we transition mile 4 to 5 in from Ashland to Framingham. So this is kind of where it'll start to even out after this point. But so 85-foot drop from I guess mile 4 going into mile 5. We have a huge drop here of 85 feet, 265 to 180. So significant downhill, but then miles 4 to 5. So on mile 4, Ashland to Framingham, first significant upward slope. So I forget about this climb because most people like to say that the first half is mostly downhill and flat. But there is a decent little climb here. It says it's a half-mile incline. It's not steep, so don't really worry about like this being like some huge nasty climb, but it's more of like a steady climb, as I recall. So just keep that in mind that there is kind of the first significant uphill between mile 4 and 5 in this race. Moving on to the next mile here. So now we are firmly in Framingham. Keep in mind, so as we like name off these little towns, Hopkinton, Ashland, Framingham, Wellesley, Newton, there's like these like towns have like little downtown like Main Street areas that you run through, and like the whole town is out there, right? Because they're off work. Like the Boston Marathon is like the most special day of the year. It's like Christmas here. It's awesome. So the whole town is like down there going nuts for you. They got all these like people have like, they have like bands, they have all sorts of stuff going on, like people handing out water and stuff. But like the town is like going crazy because they're like, this is amazing for them. Like I live in a small town outside Louisville. So like I imagine like a huge race like the Boston Marathon, like running through my town here. And like I would go watch like when the Ironman went through Louisville and like came through like Oldham County where I live outside of Louisville. I would go watch because I was like, this is so cool. There's an Ironman going through my town. And that's like how this is for them. Like this is the marathon of marathons. And once a year, like, however, I don't know, 30,000 plus people, descend on this town and run through it. And it's just like a super cool moment for the people in these towns. So they go crazy for you as you're running through these towns. So just make sure you soak that in because this is like really special and stuff you don't really get at other races. So with this being a point to point, it's very unique. You start in a small town, you finish in a big downtown area. So very unique. So from let's look at the elevation here. So from miles 4 to 5, we're at 180 feet. And then from miles 5 to 6, so we gained 25 feet from miles 5 to 6, or going into mile 5, And then it says, yeah, runners leave the countryside behind as they proceed along the Boston Marathon route. 3 small rolling hills. I will say, and I talked about this on the reel I made, miles 5 through 15 are the miles where I would say these are your like lock into pace miles. Obviously, there is some rollers throughout the whole course. Really, it's never there is some flat moments, but like within every like half mile or mile, there's going to be some version of uphill or down. But miles 5 through 15 are really the miles you can like lock into a rhythm. I call them your rhythm miles, where you can like really lock into a more consistent pace where there's not going to be any like really significant up and downs. There will be small ones, but as you'll see at the elevation at start on these miles, it's not really like anything crazy like we saw the first 4 miles. So just keep that in mind that like once you get into like mile 5 through 15, this is when you like kind of just lock in the pace, keep that same effort, and you can really like run true marathon pace here. But then as we get into the Newton Hills, things have to change, right? As the course gets more hilly. So miles 6 to 7, we're in Framingham. Uh, like I said, with the crowds, it says development gets denser. And yeah, so this is like as development gets denser, there's going to be more crowd filling the streets here. And it's going to be fun. So just keep that in mind. We keep going downhill 180 to 155 feet, miles 7 to 8. And then it says hard to tell where Framingham and Natick ends and Natick begins. Most of these towns you'll see there's a little sign and it says like entering or like welcome to Natick, welcome to Framingham. So you'll kind of know along the course like where you are at those different moments. I don't remember if there's a sign for Natick, but I do recall like Wellesley, Framingham. I think Newton has one Brookline later in the race. So just be looking out for those signs as kind of like mental notes as you're moving along the course. It kind of helps to know like, I don't know, it's a different way to determine like kind of how far you are on the course. But anyway, again, so we're in the rhythm miles 7 to 8, Framingham to Natick. Mile 8 to 9, you're in Natick. Slight upcline here, or incline here. You go up 25 feet. Again, like miles 1 through 4, there's this huge decline feet between mile and mile here, but now we're kind of like 20 to 30 feet difference on these miles. So that's not too significant over a mile. So again, these are the miles you want to lock in to that steady marathon pace before, obviously we hit the Newton Hills, which we're going to get to here soon. Anyway, mile 8 to 9, you're in Natick, stores and stores along, mostly terrain, rolling terrain, but still fairly flat. Miles 9 to 10, you are still in Natick. Again, for miles 9 to 10 and then 10 to 11 here, 20-foot incline, so 150 to 170. Really not significant. Again, goes along with that theme. Miles 5 to 15 are the lock-in miles. And then miles 10 to 11 here. So the road is flat through Natick. Lots of crowds gather around the Natick Center. So again, like I said too, like as you're going through these towns, the main area of these towns, the crowd's out, and it's just a lot of fun. So make sure you enjoy this stuff. This is very different than any other race. Miles 11 to 12. Again, we have a 10 feet incline here. Again, just goes to show, guys, take advantage of these rhythm miles, run a steady pace. And then so this is where it gets fun now. So we're leaving Natick and then we're entering Wellesley, the infamous Wellesley, right? So this obviously is where the Scream Tunnel is going to start. You might start hearing it. You can really hear like a quarter mile, half mile out. So, just start getting excited when you see Wellesley, like, okay, the Scream Tunnel's coming. But when the Scream Tunnel comes, keep in mind, a lot of people get excited. They want to do high fives and they look down at their watch and all of a sudden they're 20 seconds too fast pace on this mile. Don't be that person. You can still give high fives without, doing a stride mid race. You don't need to do that. So just be smart as the crowds get more and more fun here to not get too excited and burn yourself for later parts in the race, because you still want to feel like those last 5 miles, like going through Boston College, Brookline. The crowds are amazing there too. And trust me, I've been in a position where like I'm running 8-minute pace in those miles and it's not fun. You don't want to be the guy on the race course where everyone's like, come on, you got this, because you're blowing up and everyone's going past you and you're cramping. So just, again, be smart pacing here. So miles 1 through 4, big downhills, use them, but not too much. Don't burn your quads. And then miles 5 to 15, again, as we see here, 11 to 12, 180 feet. 12 to 13, 165. So 15-foot drop difference. Again, not too significant. Can still be, running an even pace here. So here, miles 12 to 13, the course inclines rather sharply downhill, but then climbs up towards the end of the mile. And then it says, for even the more experienced runners, this hints at the challenges ahead. Obviously referring to the Newton Hills. I really like that. So, okay, and then here we go. I like this blurb on Wellesley College here. Wellesley College, located near mile 13, cancels classes for the day, which sets the stage for what greets the runners as Wellesley students line up soon after mile 12 to create what they call the Scream Tunnel, a wall of sound unbroken for the duration of the race and amplified by loud music, colorful signs, high fives, hugs, kisses to cheer on the runners as they stream past. We had a viral video on our Instagram page last year. One of our friends, Danny's good friend Brad, kissed one of the Wellesley girls rather aggressively. She was into it though. Don't get me wrong; it wasn't like a forced thing, but yeah. So they were both into it, and that's what made it go viral. Was like, he was running by, and she just had arms open, and he went for it, and yeah, you think like that kind of story is like how you met your wife, but didn't work out like that. So it's all good though. Great story, funny video, good stuff. So again, just be careful here. Don't, get too excited. Make sure you give high fives though. Like you got to give high fives. Even the pros do high fives at Wellesley, but just don't, do anything crazy with your pace here because you're going to be tempted to. Trust me, I have done this. Let me make the mistakes of Boston so you don't have to. And that's what this video is for. Anyway, so miles 12 to 13, you start at 165. 13 to 14, you're at 145, so 20-foot drop here. And it says this mile is mostly flat. Less than 200 yards into mile 13 is the race's halfway mark. So shortly after the Scream Tunnel, runners turn left onto Route 16. And then, it says the blocks are lined with ritzy shops. So, it says the crowds of spectators thin out a bit here, but I actually find that they're not too bad here. There's not, like, this might refer to sections where there's less crowd. Guys, there's, maybe it's not like 2 or 3 people deep and like, or maybe even like 5 people deep in some parts of the race, but like there's people like literally the whole way in this race. Like people are along the side of the road like every mile of the Boston Marathon. So there's not really any like truly quiet miles. This mile might be more quiet than others, but it's pretty solid. So just keep that in mind. All right. So from 13 to 14, we're at 145 feet. 14 to 15, we go to 130 feet. So 15-foot drop here. Guys, like use these to your advantage before you get to the Newton Hills, because the Newton Hills are coming now. Like you have to start thinking about the hills here. They start at 16. So yeah, we have 15-foot drop, again, mostly flat, picturesque village houses and more shops in Wellesley. And then, so this is where we start thinking about leaving Wellesley here. So miles 15 to 16. So we go 14 to 15, we start at 130. 15 to 16, we're at 160 feet. So we go up 30 feet here. And this is like one of the most important parts of the race here. So pay attention if you are not paying attention here and you're running your first Boston, or maybe you don't remember this. I'll read this here. After crossing Route 9, there's a slight rise, and then after about a half mile, runners hit the sharpest descent of the race. So, that first mile is a really sharp descent, but this descent is huge as well. So just be ready when you hit this descent, the hills are coming, because then we enter the hills after this descent. So again, be very careful here not to make that huge, don't, like you can go like a bit faster than your marathon pace on this downhill, but don't destroy your quads, because we have 4 decent climbs coming up right after this bad boy. So, all right, let's keep going. This is where the terrain changes. And for the next 9 miles, the runners will be challenged by a series of rippling hills. Alone, none of the hills will be particularly challenging, but cumulative, they take a toll. So it says for the next 9 miles, you take on hills. I actually, really, Heartbreak is the last like significant hill of this race. You could still argue like there's like a couple rollers the last 5 miles, but it's mostly downhill and flat. So really, when I see this, I'm thinking really once I crest heartbreak around 21, I believe, I'm not really worrying about uphill too much anymore. Again, a couple rollers, but I would really say here, and I would like maybe edit this if I was writing it myself and say for the next 5 miles, the runners will be challenged by a series of serious hills. But I do like what it says. Alone, none of the hills will be particularly challenging, but cumulative, they take a toll. And that's true. If you were just on an easy run through the Newton Hills, maybe you wouldn't like, it'd be like, yeah, like it's a fairly hilly route, but it's not going to be anything where like you're like hands on knees going easy pace. But it's really like because they're in the back half of a marathon is what makes them hard. So like it's just like the placement of them is why they're notorious, not necessarily the difficulty of the hills. You know, they are still hills. They are like, so it's just like where they are in the race. That's what makes them difficult. So I don't want anyone to think you're like climbing up like the nastiest hill in your town or like Mount Everest or whatever. Like, you know, it's not. Heartbreak has the name mainly because yes, it's like it is a longer hill, but mostly because of where it's placed in the race. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, moving on here. So again, here's the huge drop. Mile 15 to 16, you start at 160 feet. Mile 16 to 17, you're at 60 feet. So you lose 100 feet between those miles. And then it says almost immediately, runners pass the entering Newton sign and start a long half. Just like I said, you'll see these signs throughout the race as you go through the towns, and start a long half-mile plus uphill climb, taking them along Route 128 overpass. Guys, there's 4 climbs. Remember, after you hit that downhill, there's 4 climbs you have to worry about. This is the first one. Heartbreak is the last one. So once you hit, you'll see Heartbreak Hill Running Company, the store. Last year they had a big sign that said, "Don't let a hill break your heart." I'm assuming they'll have something up like that. It was a big Nike red sign. That's the last hill. So big downhill, first hill, and then you can start counting. Okay, first hill, I have 2 more, and then I have Heartbreak, and then I'm done. Then it's pretty like fast from there. So just keep that in mind as you hit this part of the course. So you see the entering Newton sign. Traffic roars by below with lots of honking from drivers who look up and spot the marathon runners. Yeah, you do go over this overpass. I forgot about that. That's a cool part of the race too. The course drops a bit around Newton Wellesley Hospital and finally gets a little flatter, not usually too crowded here. So miles 16 to 17, we started 60 feet. And then miles 17 to 18, we had a 55-foot gain here. So now we're climbing, right? So this is where the course gets a little more serious. This is why like between miles like 1 and 15, you want to bank not like a crazy amount of time, but you do want to bank. If you have like a goal time in mind, you want to have some time banked. Do not force a pace on these hills. You need to maintain your marathon effort on the hills on this part of the course. Use the downs. Don't burn matches that you don't need to burn on the climbs though, because if you burn those matches, you need to have some matches left the last 5 miles. Because like I said, the last 5 miles are fast. They're downhill. They're flat. You need to have matches saved for those if you want to finish strong in your race. If you don't have those matches saved, it's not going to end well for you. So be careful. Think when you hit the Newton Hills, think effort over pace. Make sure you bank a little bit of time before the Newton Hills. But then as you get into this segment of the race, 16 to 21, just be thinking effort over pace. That is the theme here. And that's how you're going to have success on the Newton Hills. Keep that in mind. All right. So 16 to 17, 60 feet. 17 to 18, 115. We have a big gain here. After going through a mostly flat residential area, runners turn right at the firehouse. Newton's 4 difficult hills lie ahead, and the first firehouse hill is about to begin. Okay, let's see. First hill. None of the hills will be, this is where the terrain starts. The runner will be challenged by a series of hills. Entering Newton sign, a long half mile plus uphill climb taking them. Okay, so that's climb 1. Let's see. Firehouse Hill lies ahead. Okay, let's start here. Newton's 4 difficult hills lie ahead. I feel like there's only 3 more for this one. Let me see here. I won't skip ahead. Let's see where this takes us, because I swear I was looking at an elevation chart the other day and it was just 4 climbs in Newton. Let's see. Newton Hills, Boston map. Let's see if we can find something here. Yeah, it's only 4. So we have the Washington Hill climb at 16, the Brayburn Hill climb at 17 and a half, John Kelly Hill at 19 and a half, and then Heartbreak Hill at 20 and a half. So yeah, it's 4 climbs. I don't know. I was going to say, I'm almost certain it's 4 climbs. So I don't know what this is talking about. Anyway, okay. Newton's, this is a steep hill, although less than a half-mile long, beginning just past the Brayburn Country Club on the right. Large crowds gather around the firehouse on along Com Ave. Okay. So mile 17 to 18, 115 feet. Then we go up 30 feet, mile 18 to 19. Still in Newton. The course curves around a bit, but it's mostly flat with a small net drop of 15 feet. So just as a reminder here, as I'm looking at the map of the hills, first climb is mile 16. It's half a mile, 2.5% gain. Let me see if I can pull this up for you guys, actually. Let me switch over to the screen. Here we go. Okay. So this is better. This map this is accurate. From my experience running the course, this is accurate. I guess people have different names for different hills, but anyway, this is better for in terms of purposes of looking at the hills in the Newton Hills. So mile 16, Washington Hill, big downhill going into the first climb, half a mile, 2.5%. And then we have mile 17 and a half, 0.4 of a mile, 4% steeper. And then it shows how much rest you have after each of these. So the first one, you have a mile of, rest or downhill flat. Next one, you have a mile and a half. And then 19 and a half, you have the John Kelly Hill is what they call it here. 0.4 of a mile, 3%, half mile rest. This is where it gets tough. Obviously, Heartbreak Hill is they have it at a half mile. Some people say it's closer to 600 meters, and they have it at 3%. So those are the 4 main hills. I don't know if the other website was counting like a different hill, maybe like a moderate hill before the first one. I don't know. It says 4 climbs ahead of Newton, but anyway, those are the hills as I know them at the Boston Marathon. But anyway, let's get back into the mile by mile summary here. So yeah, 17 to 18 in Newton, you are at 115 feet. Mile 18 to 19, you're up at 145. Miles 19 to 20, it says runners encounter. Let me go back to this other map and make sure what this is saying is spot on here. I'm interested to see. Let's skip ahead here and see what this is saying about Heartbreak. Okay. The runners are looking tired and stressed, but the hill becomes steeper, flattens out. Okay, and then only to climb again near Center Street as the impact of this third hill, another sharp incline just after Newton City Hall hits the runners. Okay. I'm thinking, okay, this is what I'm thinking is happening. I think they're lumping, they're lumping the third hill together on this mile by mile. I think that's what's going on. Yeah, I think they're lumping that third hill together. So that's why I got confused. Anyway, okay. So miles 19 to 20, 130 feet. We're getting close to Heartbreak here. Just after mile 19, runners cross Walnut Street where the Forever Young statue of John A. Kelly. Okay, so that's what that hill is named after, the John Kelly Hill. So I think they're bunching like 2 hills together here, the John Kelly Hill, with like another kind of, I guess, short, steep climb shortly after that. But it's really 4 hills in Newton. So it's 4 significant hills in Newton. Almost immediately now, the course, now quite curvy, begins a gradual incline. By this point, the runners are looking tired and stressed, but soon the hill becomes steeper, it flattens out a little, only to climb again near Center Street as the impact. Okay, so they are like, they're essentially saying there's a false summit on the John Kelly Hill before you actually reach the top of it, is what it's saying. So, okay, that makes sense. So this is saying the way they like wrote this on this website, they're saying it's like kind of 5 hills, but they're counting like the John Kelly one is 2 because there's kind of like a false summit, I guess is what they're saying. Okay. Anyway, so 19 to 20, we're at 130 feet. And then miles 20 to 21, we're at 150. So we go up 20 feet of climb. Mile 20 begins almost at Center Street. Heartbreak Hill, Newton's fourth hill along this stretch of Com Ave, comes just after the shops. Again, so you'll see Heartbreak Hill Running Company. They'll probably have a sign at the top of Heartbreak Hill. There's a banner that says like something like "Congrats, you made it to the top of Heartbreak," something like that. Anyway, and I like what this says about Heartbreak Hill. Heartbreak Hill itself isn't horrible. You probably wouldn't even feel winded if you were walking, and Key Point hadn't already run 20 miles, like just like I said, yeah. But it challenges the runners just as they're already exhausted by the previous hills and the previous miles. At the hill's summit, Prudential Tower comes into sight. Crowds along the stretch are large. Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to touch on. The crowd at Heartbreak Hill is really good. So if you're hurting a bit at Heartbreak, like again, one, you got 5 miles of like nice flat down after Heartbreak. Keep that in mind. But also, yeah, don't force it on Heartbreak. You're probably going to have like see a mile split that you don't want to see at this point in the race. So just be careful on Heartbreak not to get too aggressive here. But enjoy it, enjoy the crowd. There's music always, people on the side with music, lots of people pumping the fist, all that stuff. So yeah, have fun on Heartbreak, soak it in. Lots of, epic stories in the Boston marathons have been made on Heartbreak. Lots of breaking the pack to victory moments have happened on Heartbreak. So even though it's going to hurt, soak it in. Heartbreak Hill is during the Boston Marathon is iconic, and many people dream. Many people that want to run Boston and have dreamt of it for so long dream of running up Heartbreak in the Boston Marathon, and they'll never get to. So if you get the opportunity to do it, just make sure you soak it in and be like, man, I'm running up Heartbreak Hill during the Boston Marathon. It's pretty cool. Anyway, so at the hill summit, Prudential Tower comes into sight. Crowds are great here. Absolutely. Crowds even bigger, get even bigger after this point. It says, so if being in large crowds makes you feel uncomfortable, stake out a spot at or before mile 20, which is awesome. So, okay. Miles 21 to 22. So 20 to 21, we're at 150 feet. You climb Heartbreak, you're at 230 feet. Mile 21 to 22, 80 feet of gain. Okay, underrated crowd spot here, Boston College. Runners pass Boston College at mile 21 as the course plummets. So keep that in mind too, guys. After Heartbreak, and Scotty loves talking about this, one of the other podcast hosts that we have, Scotty always says, be careful on that downhill, because right after you crest Heartbreak, you're going to want to rip that downhill to make up time from Heartbreak. And again, this is a spot where people make mistakes. They get the quads burning at that point in the race, or that's where like the quad cramps can happen when your legs are really fatigued. You just, went over 4 serious climbs late in the race, and you want to, attack this downhill, make up some time. Just don't get too aggressive. You can go sub-marathon pace, but don't get down to like half marathon pace. Don't do anything crazy, because there's going to be that huge downhill. You're going to be tempted to just fall down it. Just be careful. Save your quads. You don't want to be, if you're running well from 21 to 26, you're going to see a ton of people cramping on these miles. I'm telling you right now, it happens every single year. Be careful. Don't be too aggressive down this hill. Anyway, so runners pass Boston College at mile 21 as the course plummets around the reservoir, along with more minor ups and downs. And then, BC's Screaming Eagles shriek, living up to their namesake. There's kids handing out beer here, fraternities out there. If you're blowing up, grab a beer, have some fun. If you're having a good race, just soak in the crowd here. It's really good. So yeah, we started this mile 230 feet. We dropped 80 feet, guys, going into the next mile as we now go from Newton and Chestnut Hill into Boston and Brighton. So big drop in elevation from those miles, like I said, after Heartbreak. So mile 22 to 23, parts of this mile are flat and parts go downhill, tough for the runners. Crowds line the Cleveland Circle, awesome cheering spot, and become increasingly bigger from this point on. Yeah. So at this point of the race, guys, as you get into Boston College, the crowds are just going to get more and more lined, deeper, until you get to the finish line, obviously, which is Buck Wild. We'll talk about that. But yeah, guys, these are some of the most fun miles of the race. You're like, I'm about to finish the Boston Marathon. There's something special about like almost emotional about like being like just so deep in the gutter, right? Just like destroyed this late in a race. And you got this like crazy crowd. Like there's no other race like this, guys. So just soak it in, and really, really enjoy these moments and these miles. Cause like just something about like being at your wits end, just like, like 3, 4 miles left in a marathon and just having like, those moments like, like where your body's like on the tipping point, you're on the edge, but you're also like getting all of this hype from the crowd around you. It's just like so much stimulus going on and you're like fighting for your life out there. Um, you're going to go back after the race and wish you were in those moments for like much longer than you were. They go by in seconds. So just soak in those moments because like once you cross that finish line, you're gonna wish you could do it all over again, and then you got to wait another year. So just keep in mind, to have fun and like really soak in these moments, even though you're going to be hurting. Okay, 22, 23, 150 feet at the start. You go more downhill next mile, 23. You're at 95 feet, so you lose 55 feet that mile. That's crazy. Huge downhill. You keep going downhill. You're in Brookline at this point, which is really just like you know a suburb of Boston. Like you're pretty much in downtown Boston at this point, or like right outside. The Sicko sign should be coming up soon. So mile 23, Brookline, 95 feet. Mile 24, still in Brookline. Another 35 feet lost. Going through another university here, Boston University. Students are lining Comm Ave, cheering loudly as it says as loudly as well. So students up for debate, but it's good. Like so, it's fun. You really go through 3 universities here. All the students are off school. They're having a blast. So just have fun, guys, in those moments. Mile 25, Boston Back Bay. So again, we go from 60 feet. Now you're at 15, more downhill. Runners go through Kenmore Square. They run along Comm Ave for a couple blocks in the Fenway neighborhood. And then, okay, so here's where like, the iconic stuff starts happening. So every year the Red Sox play a home game at nearby Fenway Park on Marathon Day. So yeah, which is a really cool story too. But anyway, so this is important. From Kenmore Square, they run along Comm Ave for a couple of blocks in the Fenway neighborhood, and then a couple of blocks in Back Bay until they reach Hereford Street, where they turn right. So, the iconic thing of Boston, right on Hereford, left on Boylston, and then you're at the finish. So at this point, we're getting close to the finish. It's getting exciting. The crowds are getting bigger and bigger and bigger as we go. And then from mile 25 to mile 26, you lose 5 feet. There is a point in here where you kind of like go over, if I recall, you go over like kind of like an underpass. So there's like a down and then a slight up. But you at this point, like there's no real there's no super serious climbs here. So the slight roller that you go on isn't too bothersome at all. But anyway, mile 26, elevation at start 10 feet. You're almost at sea level. Runners pass the big stores along Boylston Street. So obviously you go right on Hereford and then you go left on Boylston. And then like you got about 400 meters to the finish at this point. 385 yards is, exact for the marathon. But anyway, you hit that left on Boylston. That's when the crowd is at its peak. When you come off Hereford and you go left on Boylston, you're on Hereford just for a little bit. Hook a right on there, go left on Boylston. As you're making that turn onto Boylston, the crowd like on your right and left are going to be like it's going to feel like you're at the Super Bowl, like you're Tom Brady of the Super Bowl. And then like the crowd on Boylston is just like it's everything. Like it's everything. People, you see people crying and stuff. Like it's unbelievable. Like runners like getting emotional because that's the Boston moment. That turn is why everyone wants to run the Boston Marathon, is because of that turn late in the race. You hit the turn and the crowd, you will never, ever, I promise you, go run London, go run Chicago, go run Berlin. I don't care. There was no turn and no crowd spot more iconic at any other marathon than this turning left on Boylston. And then you see the finish and then it's all in. You go all in at this point, get to the finish line. You're in Copley Square on Boylston Street, and there it is. Yeah, so really, really special, really special. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know it's kind of chaotic as I was trying to figure out the hills, but let me grab that hill graph one more time for you guys, just so we can like totally square that away. Especially if you're racing, I just want to make sure you guys like have this totally clear on how the hills are, because the that mile by mile was really good, but I think it kind of got me confused on the hills. So anyway, let's go through this one more time, because this is right. There is 4 hills in the Newton Hills. So big downhill. Remember, big downhill right before mile 16. You're on the mile 15 mile. Big downhill, first incline, Washington Hill, half mile, 2.5% incline. Then you get a mile of rest, mile 17 and a half, Brayburn Hill, 4/10 of a mile, 4%, steepest hill of the race, of the Newton Hills, maybe not of the race. Then you get a mile and a half, reset, get the heart rate back under control, smooth out the pace. Then we're at 19 and a half after a long break, mile and a half break before the in between hills. John Kelly Hill. Then, 4/10 of a mile, 3%. Short rest after this one, guys. Half mile rest. And then you hit heartbreak, 20 and a half. Absolutely brutal spot for this to be. 20 and a half in a marathon, half mile climb. It's, again, really closer to 600 meters. In my personal experience, closer to 600 meters, little, it kind of depends where you consider the incline to start and where you consider the hill to end, because there's kind of like a bit of a false flat before you hit the top of the hill. Anyway, somewhere between 600 and 800 meters, heartbreak hill, 3% climb. And then, yeah, look at this. I mean, the graph is pretty downhill at this point. So we're, through these miles here, huge downhill, 21, flattens out through 22, big downhill, 22 to 23. Slight, again, very slight, guys. It's like these hills, the last few miles, they're nothing. I'm telling you, they're nothing. I don't even recall these being hills, really. So slight incline going into 23. You go down, down, down into 24, and then really like 24 and a quarter to the finish. You're pretty flat. Again, as you get like really close to the finish, like maybe around a half mile, you're going to go under, like kind of in a tunnel, like under an underpass, and slight climb, but then you're pretty much there. You'll start to see the Sitco sign. I believe you can see it. Obviously, that's one of the iconic things at Boston is the Sitco sign. I lost you. Here I am. Yeah, one of the iconic things is the Sitco sign. I believe. Let me double check that. I think you can see it with like 2 miles to go, but then you run by it at a mile to go. Let's see here. Let me get that 100% right, because I don't want you guys to. Okay, here we go. So Boston's website actually says a Sitco cheer zone will be located at mile 25.2 beneath the iconic Sitco sign landmark. So I think you can actually see the Sitco sign when you're around 2 miles out. From my recall, but yeah, it's famous because there's a mile to go at this point, essentially. So when you can see the Sitco sign, you're pretty close. Hang on for dear life. You're almost there. It's famous because that's kind of like the you're almost there sign, right? So yeah, when you see the Sitco sign, a couple miles left, and then when you're at it, crowd should be good, and then you got a mile to go. Give it everything, and then don't forget. Obviously, it'll be marked well. You can't forget, but right on Hereford, left on Boylston, and guys, like I'm telling you, you will want the moment when you turn left on Boylston to last, an hour, right? You want it to last forever. You want to live in that moment. So just like, if you got your music in, like, please, I'm begging you, if you do music in a marathon, I don't care, do it. If there's any point in any marathon where it's time to turn the music off and take out the earbuds, it is at the turn. Like when you're turning on to Hereford, music out, pause the song, whatever you got to do, put it in the pocket and soak it in, guys. That is what it's all about. When you hit that left on Boylston, you want nothing blocking the sound of the crowd and stuff, because you will remember for the rest of your life. It'll make you emotional the rest of your life thinking about it. So headphones out and soak it in. Thanks for listening, guys. I thought this was going to be 15 to 20 minutes. It was 50. I hope this was somewhat helpful for you. I'm glad we got the hills sorted at the end here. I got that mile by mile, got a little confusing on the hills, but hopefully that cleared it up for you guys. 4 hills in Newton, on the Newton Hills. But yeah, I am planning on to break 220. Obviously a lot of things have to go right for me, so I'm going to go for it. We'll see what happens. But I need to go through half run 108.45, bank about a minute 15, then run 5:35 pace through the Newton Hills, and then just try to run like 5:18 to 5:20 the last 5 miles. So that's kind of the game plan for me. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, and that just kind of goes to show, like, you gotta be ready for the Newton Hills to be like about 15-20 seconds slower per mile than your goal pace. So like my goal pace overall is to average around 5:20. I am like fully ready to accept miles between 5:30 and 5:40 in the Newton Hills in order to save myself for later in the race. So just be ready for that. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. And we got a couple more like Boston focus pods coming up. This isn't a pod, just a YouTube video. But anyway, hope you guys enjoy. And I got my YouTube video coming out. I'm going to film at the long run tomorrow, but then I'll drop it probably Sunday or Monday. So thanks, guys. Hope to see you at Boston. Let me know if you're going to be at Boston. Let me know if this was good or not. Just let me know if it was good or not. If it was bad, I'm okay with that too. I can take it. Anyway, thanks, guys. See ya.